What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the opinionated hippie, and this is part 12 of my ranking Frank Zappa's guitar solos within the context of an album. This is You Can't Do That on Stage Anymore, Volume 2. Not going in any particular order, though I am trying to finish up the stage series right now. Then after I finish the stage series, I will deep dive into a particular tour. I don't know which tour yet. But if you are new to this channel or have not watched other Frank Zappa videos or only watched maybe one or two, you might not know that my favorite Zappa band tour by far is the Summer Fall 74 band. That's what this release is. This is Frank played a number of shows in Helsinki in September of 74. These are songs from several shows sort of compiled to feel like a complete show. There are 7 solos on this release. The rhythm section, Chester Thompson on drums, the amazing Tom Fowler on bass. You got George Duke on keyboards. You got some Ruth on percussion. You'll hear some of her effect on some of these solos. Napoleon's there on vocals. Yeah, and that's it, right? Kind of a nice little tight, small band. But anyways, 7 solos. Yeah, like I said, this was one of my all-time favorite albums when I ranked his albums. This is my all-time favorite tour. So don't expect an unfair or unbiased review of this album or these solos. Here we go. Number 7, Don't You Ever Wash That Thing. It's like, what, 40 seconds long? 30 seconds of that weird, like, dun, dun, boom, bow, bow, playing some aggressive, noisy, just kind of filling space for 30 seconds while the band kind of does these weird things and then goes into this dun, dun, like upbeat groove before they go into the next weird Don't You Ever Wash That Thing section. Fun little solo. I mean, I guess it's a solo. It is 30 seconds long. But yeah, I mean, I think by far the least rewarding thing on here just because of its relatively short duration. Number 6 is Approximate, the solo in that. They did 3 versions of this. They did the sort of original non-jam version that was just like the head. Then they did the one with the feet where they stamped it out. And then they did one that was the full-on head with a full-on sort of jam session at the end of it. I think there's the jam session is like Frank takes a really short, intense, chaotic 40-second solo. I think we have another couple solos. Then Frank closes with another intense 40-second solo. Kind of bookends the solo section before like the approximate heads and closing part. It's just pure Frank Zappa on the attack for 40 straight seconds. This version of Approximate is kind of chaotic. The head is chaotic. The solo section is kind of chaotic. The finish is chaotic. Frank's adding just chaotic guitar right in the middle. It works. It's fantastic. I do want to say this. A lot of people don't like this release because what Frank did when he released it back in like early 90s, he replaced all of, apparently there either was no kick drum present or because there was a fault in the recording, he literally overdubbed a Chad Wackerman kick drum. So every time there's a a Chester Thompson kick drum, it's replaced by a Chad Wackerman kick drum sound. It bothers some people. I honestly don't notice it unless I'm like, oh, that kick drum. Oh yeah, there it is. It is kind of annoying, but then it kind of goes away and it doesn't bother me. So I will acknowledge that that is there and some people don't like it. Does not bother me. Number 5, Stinkfoot. I am a huge fan of Stinkfoot solos. I think Frank understands the purpose of an opening Stinkfoot solo. He's not trying to like deliver the goods right off the bat as much as he's trying to set the tone for the night. And this is a pretty weird and pretty aggressive tone setter. Pretty thoroughly developed solo. It is, and I think because the payoff on 3 of these solos in particular is so high, this kind of aggressive, a little more demanding opening solo, a little bit of a weirder opening solo works well because the payoff is so incredibly well for the rest of the show. But yeah, lots of effects. I put just burst of intensity throughout. It's pretty aggressive for a first solo, but this entire release has some pretty aggressive solos and some pretty interesting play, and so it works. But that would be number 4. Number 5 out of 7. Number 4 is Redunzel. So there are 4 great solos on here. 3 of them I have numerically as pretty much perfect. This one is like a decimal point or two below perfect. Kind of got a really dark opening theme to it. It's definitely going to some like sort of more darker places in the very beginning. And then he just kind of takes that dark energy and gets more and more like frenetic and crazy and typical Frank chaotic, with a rhythm section that I think it's by far the most interesting rhythm section because it does this weird thing where it just kind of like, I'm not even sure what it really does. It's like this weird break, chaotic jazz funk type mixture that Thompson and Fowler do that make his solos very like kind of halting and start and stopping, but it works well and it never falls apart. There are times when it seems like, oh no, they've lost the one or they have no idea what they're doing. Not in like a really interesting Fish way or Wackerman way, or like all the bands do that Frank plays with, but this one just feels like, whoa, where are we? What's going on? And he's just tearing it up as the band is doing that. Just an absolutely epic redunzel solo that pales in comparison to the other three solos on this list. Just kind of all over the place. It's wild. It's just frenzied, but at the same time, it feels cohesive. It feels like it's all one single narrative thought, despite how like aggressive it is. And Chester Thompson and Tom Fowler on this solo and the next three, their background support is just fantastic. Number three, or we got three more solos, and I would say that all three of these solos are pretty much perfect solos for completely different reasons. Number three is Montana. I think this is one of the greatest, obviously, I think this is one of the greatest things Frank has played. It is just, starts off almost Inca Rhodes-esque in that it has a very sort of grand, magnificent quality with maybe a little more funk than your average Inca Rhodes has. Frank is just obviously tacking it. It's a slower tempo. I would say it's even a ballad at this tempo. This is the one where they announced Whipping Post, and then they played it slower because Ruth had the wrong mallets, and then Frank played it like slower. Frank seems like he has a lot to say in this solo, and towards the end, it kind of just completely falls apart. And like at one point, I think everybody stops playing, and then Frank comes in before they go back into the closing vocals, which they cut off and go into Big Swifty. Frank plays this weird like riff to kind of get the band back into it. I think it's very typical of what November 74 would eventually sound like, in which the solos are just these really long, almost like Frank is just in this playground with Chester and Tom, and they're trying out different things and going from like the slide to the swing to the monkey bars and just trying all of these different things. But there's a cohesion because the three of them seem to be in it together. And wherever Frank goes, Chester and Tom follow him there and just make it more interesting. It's not like they're off there doing their own thing, as in like, I would say with Wackerman and Tunis, sometimes Wackerman and Tunis are over here just killing it, and Frank's over here. When Frank gets crazy, Tom and Chester follow him in crazy ways, and it keeps everything feeling cohesive in a way that I don't think other tours necessarily do. Though I wouldn't say these are Frank's best solos. I think considering the rhythm section and their involvement, they rank up there with some of Frank's best. But yeah, really funky ending, really long, kind of meanders for a while, but I like the meandering Frank in 74. It's just, yeah, there's a neat little urgency to this solo that I really, really like. And being that it's a ballad at this tempo, that even helps even more. Number two, which is another just absolutely perfect solo. And this one is Frank in his full-on head-banging, almost pure heavy metal, definitely pure rock, definitely like stadium flexing your six-string muscle type attack. This is just Pygmy Twilight, the slow, hard rock, almost slightly metal version of this. It is so good. It builds so perfectly through the solo, and then there's a dip right towards the middle of it, and then after you get that dip, it rebuilds back to an absolutely fantastic, thrilling ending. It's probably the best solo that fits the song, meaning like the way the solo comes out of the song, the way it goes back into like the actual structure of the song, I think it has the most, it feels like it belongs in the song, and it's not just a solo section where Frank solos. Got the hiccups. Part of it happens because once he goes back into the end, they just kind of jam it out and he's on guitar for the whole thing, so that helps. But yeah, it's like arena rock at its absolute best. It's like just a heavy metal masterpiece, and Frank is absolutely shredding. This is a song I definitely wish had stayed in Frank's repertoire over the years. After this tour, it would disappear, sadly. And I think this is the best version of it. It's much slower than those earlier versions. It's much more drawn out. It's much more dramatic, and it's just heavier. And it is just a perfect, perfect little solo. And then number one, I mean, one of the best things Frank has ever played live. There is a shortened version of this on One Size Fits All. The solo on One Size Fits All is the exact same solo, just shortened, and that is Inca Roads. It's just about 4 minutes long. It's absolutely perfect. It's definitely telling a story. There's definitely dynamics to the story as he goes on. At times it's frenzied, at times it's melodic, at times it's thoughtful. The rhythm section at all points of time is right there with him. It's like a perfect solo. It's one of those that, like, yes, these entire videos are based on the concept that I can put words to music and I can describe them like effectively. This is why I love Inca Roads. Like this solo, there's a majesty to it. There's just like a grandness. There's an epicness to it. Frank delivers every step of the way. It has a very it's a 4 minutes of just one cohesive thought that goes all over the place, that just delivers. And I do think the edited version on One Size Fits All is not bad. I think I ranked that pretty high on my guitar solo list. But this one, the parts, I think there's like maybe a minute, that's maybe just under a minute that's actually in this, that's edited out of the One Size Fits All version. Those little things that are edited out just add a little more flavor or a little more space, or like take an idea and just follow it maybe a little further down a rabbit hole before we go back and like, what is it edit out, and we start on a new idea. And I do think those extra, I think it's like 40 seconds or so. I probably should have checked, but it's not like half the solo. I think they do add a little bit of flavor and flesh it out in a way that makes it feel just a little more impactful and just effective and overall fantastic. But yeah, those are the solos right there. Redunzo, Montana, Pygmy, Inca Roads are all just stupidly great solos. Absolutely fantastic. These solos, a lot of Fall 74 solos are some of my favorite playing, not only because of the way Frank plays, the kind of the sound of his guitar, but that rhythm section I just absolutely love. But Redunzo, maybe a step below, 0.2 below those other two. But Montana, Pygmy, and Inca are all giving you something kind of different, a little bit of a different flavor. Montana, a little more all over the place. Pygmy hits a lot harder. Inca, just epic perfection. Even Stinkfoot is a really good opening. Just an absolutely fantastic release as far as the guitar solos go. I have absolutely no issue with the kick drum sound. This was one of my all-time favorite releases of all time. And where would it rank among all the albums? Right now, no surprise, people. It's number one. Like, really. Inca Roads, Pygmy Twilight, Montana, Redunzo. Like, as great as that Zombie Wolf and that Death of Sorcery and that Torture Never Stops are on Volume 1, those are 3 solos. Here we get 4 solos. And all of them, like the only one on You Can't Do That on Stage Volume 1, which compares, is that Torture Never Stops. I would put Zombie Wolf and Death of Sorcery a notch below Inca Roads, Montana, Pygmy Twilight on these. Just absolutely some of my all-time favorite playing on this release. Fantastic release. As far as guitar solos go, and also far as not guitar solos go. But that's another video that's already somewhere on the channel. But anyways, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. Let me know what your favorite solos on this are. Let me know how that kick drum bothers you. Let me know your thoughts, because you know how this works. Subscribe, like, comment below, and go listen to music. Go listen to that Pygmy Twilight solo first. It's probably the one you haven't listened to. And I think that Pygmy Twilight solo is just, the entire Pygmy Twilight is epic. But revisit that one first if you're not familiar with these. Just to see how Frank can flex those hard rock, slightly heavy metal muscles. It is impressive, people. It's impressive. Thanks for watching. Peace. Talk to you later.